Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the globe joining us today. This is Bridget from Acquia. Today's webinar is Next Gen Contextual Commerce with Sal Visca from Elastic Path, Frank Febraro from Phase 2, and Tom Wentworth from Acquia. Just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please send them in the Q&A tab and I will assist you. If you have any questions for the presenters, please submit them in the Q&A tab as well, and they will answer them at the end of the presentation. Slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and also sent to you via email within the next few days. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Tom.
Great, thanks so much, Bridget. And again, welcome everyone to today's webinar. So my name is Tom Wentworth. I run the product marketing organization here at Acquia. My responsibility is to speak to our customers, prospects, and partners about all the great products we're building and all the great value that we're bringing to our customers. Sal?
Hey everyone, I'm Sal Visca, CTO of Elastic Path. I've been here for about 9 years, and prior to that I was at SAP, Business Objects, IBM, kind of building a lot of the enterprise software that we're spending a lot of time ripping out these days and putting in next generation solutions like we're all talking about today. So excited to be here today.
And I'm Frank Febraro. I'm the CTO and the co-founder of Phase 2, and we are a digital experience agency.
Great, thanks Frank, and thanks Sal. So we'll get started by just doing a quick review of the history of commerce platforms, because those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, as the saying goes. So of course, commerce, if you go all the way back, there was a time where there was an internet where we didn't sell things. In fact, the NSF Foundation back in the days when the internet was primarily a research tool had banned any sort of commerce happening on the internet all the way through 1995. But of course, the early emergence of web browsers, the work done by Tim Berners-Lee and by my alma mater, the University of Illinois, web browsers came up. Consumers started to realize the power and potential of the internet, and the NSF in 1995 loosened the restrictions on being able to do commercial business on the internet. Today now, nearly what, 20, 30 years later, I can't even do the math, we have over 2 quadrillion in global online sales. And in case you were wondering, 2 quadrillion is over 15 zeros. I didn't know that, and here's what it looks like when you write it all out. Back in the early days of commerce, sites were bespoke. There were no tools, there were no frameworks. If you wanted to build commerce applications, you were writing code. In fact, this is one of the most interesting things I've ever seen before. This is Jeff Bezos on a Usenet news group way back in 1995, looking for C++, C++, and C and Unix programmers to help him build a commerce app that ultimately would become Amazon.com, right? So back then, in the early days, it was anyone who wanted to transact online was literally building applications from scratch. Of course, software companies and tech companies realized the tremendous opportunity to help make it easier for companies to be able to build these commerce applications. So you saw the rise in the late 90s of the first generation commerce platforms like IBM, companies you probably haven't even heard of, like Open Market and Broadvision and ATG. But these were the technology platforms that empowered the first generation of commerce pioneers. And if we remember back, whatever happened to all those commerce pioneers? We had Pets.com and the Sock Puppet, Boo.com, Webvan, Kibu, eToys, Cosmo. Well, not all of them did so well. I don't know if it was necessarily because of the commerce platform they were using, but obviously we've come a long ways since the first generation of commerce applications, many of whom had the right idea, just the wrong, maybe a little bit too early to the market. But what was created in that era was these monolithic commerce platforms. So because there wasn't any alternative, these commerce platforms had to provide everything from being able to manage content, to be able to manage imagery and SKU information and romance copy, to being able to manage shopping carts and transaction fulfillment, to being able to manage catalogs and couponing. And it was just a nightmare of complexity. Of course, they also had to manage the delivery of these commerce experiences. And this resulted in every commerce site basically looking the same. You had very limited front end flexibility, these grid-like experiences. It's difficult to maintain, required very sophisticated programmers to be able to do even simple things like change the layout of something on a page. So while these monolithic commerce platforms were a step forward from Jeff Bezos's C++ post, it didn't get customers where they needed to be. And what we ended up was very similar to the TV VCR combo from the 90s. When I went to college, my mom bought me one of these and it sounded like a great idea. I got one thing with everything I needed inside of it, but the reality was this coupling of capabilities means that you're making compromises. And often you find you outgrow one part and it makes the entire thing useless. The minute we had to switch to DVD, all of a sudden my TV became irrelevant, which is true story. So the next generation of commerce was we had these monolithic platforms that were $10 million plus to implement. So disruption came from organizations like Shopify and Magento who said, we'll try to make commerce easier. And we'll try to make it much more like a consumer application so that anyone can sell online. And they did meet that objective. Products like Shopify have made it easier for retailers to be able to set up sites and set up stores incredibly quickly with reasonably sophisticated capabilities. However, we were back to some of the same challenges that we had with these monolithic commerce platforms. And that's because every Shopify site looks exactly like every other Shopify site. And the minute you wanted to do something that these platforms couldn't provide, you were sort of limited by the out-of-the-box capabilities. So it was a great attempt at solving a very real problem for retailers, but it didn't solve the entire problem. In fact, it created a new problem that I like to call the two-site syndrome. And Apple is maybe the best example of this. And Apple didn't use Shopify, obviously, but they had built their own bespoke commerce application where you could buy Apple products. And then of course they had apple.com, which was where they did all the merchandising marketing of those products. But yet these were two entirely different sites with entirely different experiences, often with entirely different messaging. And it was because the brand marketers and Steve Jobs, who cared very deeply about product marketing, didn't want to be constrained by what the commerce site was able to provide. So instead of trying to solve that problem on the commerce site, they literally for the longest time maintained two separate experiences. And that obviously isn't the answer either. And now we're at the pace where, as we all know, the pace of innovation is dramatically increasing, right? So being locked into these legacy systems that don't move fast enough for the modern consumer, where to get to 50 million users, it took television 22 years, and it took Pokemon Go 19 days. And I was very much one of those first 50 million users. But you don't have the luxury of being able to wait. We have to be able to move fast to deal with the modern consumer reality. And this is because we have more devices than ever. The amount of touch points it takes to convert a consumer, there's no such thing as this linear journey anymore. A customer journey looks like a plate of spaghetti. Customers can interface with as many as 5 to 6 channels before they purchase an item. They might start by researching online. They might go look at it in a retail store. They might receive a retargeted ad on Instagram. And, and customers want to purchase for all those channels as well. So we have a dramatically changing consumers. They want brands to understand them better. They want to become repeat buyers. They're willing to give up some of their data for personalization, as long as that data is understood. They know what they're sharing and they're getting benefit from it. But brands on the other side still struggle to personalize content. They still believe real-time personalization is critical. And of course, they want to deliver better conversion rates, but there's still very much this gap between the expectations of a modern multi-channel consumer and what brands are able to deliver. So with that, this webinar is going to focus on talking to you all about a new way, we think a better way. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Sal.
Hey, everyone. So let's talk contextual commerce. So, we in the industry are notorious for coming up with new terms and Contextual commerce is probably another one of these. We always throw an adjective in front of the word commerce, whether it's, experience-driven commerce we were talking about years ago, or omni-channel, or ambient, or pervasive, or what we often at Elastic Path kind of come up with, the idea of headless commerce. And we'll talk about what that means and the agility that comes with that. When I joined back in 2010, 2011, we were a full stack solution, and we decided quickly to kind of, as I often say, quite brutally cut the head off of the stack and focused in on what we did really well, which was the commerce elements, and partner with great companies like Acquia that are using really great experience platforms for the experience side of things. So let's get into what we mean by contextual commerce. And again, the exact adjective probably doesn't matter as much. The point is really trying to make commerce embedded in the experience. And obviously personalization is going to be a really key part of this. And solutions like Acquia's Lift really help understand the user journeys, user behaviors, and try to understand next best action, next best offer, those kinds of things. So I think we all are seeing on the web these days how things are almost getting kind of creepy, where you think about something and next thing you know, it's showing up on your web pages. So the AI robots are kind of listening and doing their thing, but we're using great technologies now to better target and provide offers that are in the right context for the user at the right time. And this idea of kind of a frictionless buying, where you can buy on the fly as you are experiencing products and services and content in that moment, rather than having to kind of write it down somewhere and then go looking for it later. And as I mentioned, the idea of kind of highly personalized, where the systems start to recognize who you are, past behaviors, the segments you fall into, and really where what you're trying to look for. And sometimes you may not even know exactly what you're looking for, but the systems can help advise on things that may look great, that might be great for you. So again, contextual commerce, if you think about a traditional web e-commerce site, you're going to have this example, Top Gear. You're going to have the imagery. You're going to have banners. You're going to have prices and availability and things. And the point here is when you use a purpose-built solution like Drupal for the content management system, powered by Acquia, along with the various other solutions they provide around personalization, and Elastic Path really for the commerce elements, you see how this page is really built up and powered by the best of breed components that really should be providing things. The commerce engine should be providing the price and availability and the colors and the stock levels and that kind of thing. And the content management system or the digital experience platforms should really be focusing on the look and feel. And if you think about this lets the marketers really manage and control that look and feel, let the IT groups be able to power the transactional side, provide proper APIs that can be used within that marketing experience. So it really allows the marketers to run somewhat independently of the IT groups, in that there's a platform with published APIs that they can use, in some cases drag and drop or connect into the experience. So this is really the kind of commerce that is powered by headless and purpose-built solutions. But if you go another step further and you start to get into the idea of true contextual commerce, so think about commerce kind of breaking outside of just the traditional web storefront or the mobile storefront, and really in all the day-to-day experiences that we go through. Elastic Path, we have a customer, Gallo Wines, and they launched this pretty incredible experience in what they call the barrel room. And this is where people are, in the room in these nice wineries, and they're trying different wines, they're tasting them. Some of the associates would have kind of a tablet application and be able to provide kind of a clienteling experience. And in that clienteling experience, they can really help the consumer understand the kinds of wines that they're tasting and really help teach them. So in the context of what they're doing. So this has been a pretty amazing experience where you're sitting there enjoying your wine in this beautiful setting. You're not really thinking about shopping per se, but you might be really interested in this wine. Maybe you want a couple bottles delivered to your hotel room or back to your, you can pick them up in the store near your house, or actually have them delivered to your house. So just overall frictionless commerce. And we often joke that this site has been incredibly impressive in terms of the kinds of sales, and we think it has more to do with Elastic Path than people drinking alcohol in a nice setting, but I'm sure that has something to do with it as well. But really kind of makes the point about contextual commerce, commerce in the context of what you're doing. And then if you go even further beyond that, we have an incredible customer in Carnival Corporation, and they've introduced this medallion class ship, and they're rolling this out across their fleet of 105 or 110 ships. Pretty impressive, brand new ships. In some cases, in other cases, ships have been outfitted with 7,000 plus sensors, IoT devices everywhere, 4,000 or 5,000 digital displays around the ship. And really what powers the experience is this concept of a medallion. And a medallion is something that a user gets, or a passenger gets when before they board the ship. They can get it in different accessories. They can have it as a pendant or as a watch. Different accessories they can buy along with that. But this medallion really gives incredible experience, because now as they walk throughout the ship, the systems know who they are, what they're doing, what the context is of where they are. When you're on a vacation, time is currency, and you have very little time. You want to make sure you make the best use of it, and it's all about the experience. And so the systems that we've produced with Carnival really start to understand the things that you may want to do and make available to you those things in the moment. And the nice thing here is I can walk up to one of the displays. As I walk up to the display, it recognizes, says, "Hey, Sal, we're coming into Jamaica tomorrow. I know you're into scuba diving. I see you've already done a level 1 certification course. I can offer you a level 2 course. And then when you're done, we can have a little cabana waiting for you at the beach. So you can have a couple hours there with a couple of beers. When you come back on the ship, I know you're into the Italian restaurants. I can book a reservation for you at sunset time. You can have the theater booked for you." All of those kinds of experiences in the context of what you're doing. I'm not sitting there trying to figure out every day that piece of paper they leave at your door and try to figure out all the different activities. Those activities come to me in the context of what I'm doing. So it's a pretty powerful experience where you really are in this kind of smart city environment where, as I have this medallion, as I walk towards my cabin room, the air conditioning comes on to the level I want. As I get closer to the room, the TV may come on. As I come to the door and put my hand on the door handle, it unlocks. This kind of experience where that medallion kind of opens up that context in terms of understanding who you are and where you are. And so it's a pretty impressive experience of the way the world, I think, is going to be. So in some ways, I say it's often a microcosm of the way the world is going to be. Highly instrumented, lots of telemetry, information about where you are, what you're doing. And again, sometimes it kind of borders on that line of creepiness. So you'll see in the industry where we start to dial back some of that potentially, or give the user control over their privacy settings. And if I'm on a ship, I might be more willing to dial that up and say, I'm willing to give more of my information about where I am, what I'm doing, because I want the system to really highly personalize so that I can take advantage of the little bit of time I have. And maybe in a retail setting, I go in the store, I don't want them to know exactly what I bought and what's in my shopping cart yet until I start to develop that experience with them. So this is just an example of the way the world can be. If you ever get a chance to get on these ships, you'll start to see the progression of this kind of experience, this contextual commerce experience, where you're not thinking about shopping, you're thinking about the experience and making the most of it. And this is really what we're trying to do with this kind of headless commerce and purpose-built, content management systems and personalization systems that really bring the experience to the user in the moment. So let's kind of move into looking at more what this looks like. So in the landscape of commerce platforms, as Tom mentioned, there are the monolithic solutions, and I was involved in building a lot of the IBM Commerce WebSphere product back in, ironically, 1996. So as soon as they opened up the web for commerce, we were all over it. So back then, we were really kind of building this all-in-one type of monolithic solution. And at the time, it served the purpose. That kind of TV and VCR setting seemed to work pretty well. And then over time, people started to realize how difficult that was to deploy. And you started to see more SaaS offerings kind of being able to take those solutions and make them available in the cloud on demand. But in a lot of cases, that kind of produces very cookie cutter kinds of experiences and web storefronts. When you see some of these e-commerce sites, they all look very much the same, other than maybe some of the look and feel, skinning of the site. And on the other side, in this day of microservices and technology and cloud, you see a real move towards people building themselves. In some cases, using toolkits and services, microservices, to build that overall experience. And it might seem very compelling because it gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility potentially, but it also puts a lot of onus on you as the organization to provide all the enterprise grade capabilities, the scale, the support. So at Elastic Path, we really try to focus in on this middle path. We are the building blocks of commerce, the tried and tested, battle-tested components that you can use and build the overall experience in. And like we've done at Gala Wines and Carnival Cruise Line and Republic Services and a bunch of these other companies that we've worked very closely with to really provide next generation commerce. And having this purpose-built headless commerce solution gives you tremendous capabilities and abilities. And as we start to add more and more microservices around this, making it even a little bit more fine-grained in some way in terms of how you build that experience. So we often talk about the consumer, and when they interface to the commerce system, to the organization, traditionally they've been going through a laptop and a web commerce experience, or a mobile web experience, or a mobile app experience. But as Tom mentioned as well, the pace of change and innovation is tremendous. When you really look at all the different kinds of touch points, how a consumer can touch and interface with an organization, wearable devices, social media, being able to buy within Pinterest or Facebook or Twitter, retail stores. You're starting to see a real move towards using the same commerce system that the digital systems use in store. And we're starting to see that more and more because organizations don't want to maintain a separate system just for their in-store system. So mobile point of sale, as you see, augmented reality, virtual reality, connected car. Tesla is a customer of ours. Today we're powering, their accessories storefront, but they want to go deeper and start to embed commerce in the experience as people are driving. You're driving down the road and, being able to identify where the charging stations can be, and maybe being able to pre-order coffee and lunch and, maybe hotel reservations, that kind of thing. So again, kind of that carnival kind of experience, but as you're driving, through your day. Connected homes is a big thing. We're starting to work with utility companies and telcos that are really starting to be the hub, the digital hub in a household, and being able to have everything interconnected. Voice commerce, Alexa, Siri, all these different things obviously are really key touch point for a user to be able to interface with. And sometimes you have the typical call support agent that you have to interface with. So our thesis is that these touch points are going to increase dramatically and get used dramatically. So what does that mean in this world of commerce? Well, in the day where you had just the web storefront and their mobile applications, you could pretty easily wire up a system that the web application would, hit the product catalog, would show the kinds of products. The catalog in the commerce system would go off to the enterprise resource planning system for, inventory levels, for product information management, inventory levels, pricing, all that kind of thing. All sounds very simple. You add in the other commerce elements, things like, merchandising, cross-sell, upsell, these kinds of things. Different prices based on who you are and what segment you fall into. Maybe you're at a gold level. Maybe you're a recurring user. You get different levels of pricing and promotions. So lots of kind of capabilities that come in a traditional commerce platform, many of which used to be delivered in a monolithic way, which also supported the user experience. But when you look at this world of having a whole bunch of APIs and microservices, just start to imagine the complexity of how to deliver that experience, touching all of those elements of commerce and being able to wire it all together. And then think about, well, what if you want a mobile point of sale or a kiosk or a digital display within your store to be able to also deliver that commerce experience? Imagine from a user standpoint, it has to be a seamless user journey. I might start online, I might go into the store, I might go onto Facebook later, talk about what I'm going to buy, I may even go into a virtual reality experience to better understand the product I may buy. I may talk to Alexa, say, okay, put it in my shopping cart or have it delivered to me. All of those kinds of experiences come together. So just imagine how messy this starts to become when you start to wire up all the underlying systems of record into your commerce platform to support that kind of experience. And very quickly, you get a lot of spaghetti. You get a lot of connections between all of these systems. And we talk about at Elastic Path trying to reduce the complexity at the consumption level. And the consumption level is really the user experience, and really hide a lot of that complexity into the commerce platform. And I'll talk about that in a second. But hopefully this starts to show that once you break beyond just the web browser and mobile applications and start to get into these other experiences with chatbots and virtual assistants and digital displays and the kind of carnival experience I talked about, things can get complex very, very quickly. So, as an Italian, I always joke that I like pasta on my plate. I don't like spaghetti in my architecture. So, what's the better way to do this? Well, you have a separation of concerns, a separation of systems. And this really comes into play where we talk about this headless commerce platform. You have the content management systems, the personalization systems like Drupal and Acquia Lift and all the various products they provide to really support the experience across all of those touch points. We built at Elastic Path something called Cortex, which really hides a lot of the complexity in that spaghetti diagram I showed earlier, and really lets the client applications just be able to consume the services of commerce and let the underlying integration layers take care of the rest. So with that, it's a lot of talk. It's trying to show the world the way it can be, the carnival type of experience, the in-context experiences that we see at places like Gallo Wines, but also taking your online web experiences and mobile experiences and making them more contextual as well. So with that, we're going to pass it over to Frank to kind of give you a sense of what does it take to put all of this together, because it can seem pretty scary. So over to you, Frank, to simplify it all.
Thanks, Sal. So when we talk to clients about getting started with contextual commerce or really any customer experience initiatives, it always starts with getting a grip on what they have going on in their organizations now. So where are they right now? And you could go to the next slide. So we would like to find out what technology is in place and what data do the various systems hold and what people and departments are involved. So truly meaningful personalization in commerce requires organizations to work together in ways that they're typically not accustomed to. And all of the introspection starts with a catalog of the technology and data ecosystem. So you can see the diagram that we have here is kind of like a canvas that we might start with in any engagement. So what we like to do here is hit the big categories because this is really a living document. So it's meant to, as you learn more about your organization and all the different technology and teams that are in play, you fill this out a little bit more. So you turn something up, you evolve the document later, and once you dig in, you're going to realize just how far across an organization technology and data live. And it's actually a great thing because you'll be learning about the various players that will need to be enrolled when you start the journey down the contextual commerce yellow brick road. Next slide. So starting the journey means you're going to have to make some decisions about how to implement, and there are competing schools of thought out there right now about what kind of platform you need in order to do contextual commerce. So do you need a homogeneous platform or a heterogeneous platform? The homogeneous platform is one where a single vendor will provide you with all or almost all of the tools that you're going to need, from the single user profile to email marketing to DAM to content management system and commerce engines and all things like that. All of those are theoretically integrated into one cohesive platform. Sal earlier called it the monolith. A heterogeneous platform is one where you can pick from the best of breed solutions for each need within the platform and you integrate them together. Like we said, things like Elastic Path's headless commerce platform are key enabling technologies for integrated platforms. So the all-in-one platform has the upside of a single support point of contact. Most buyers of these platforms, they think that the vendor is high quality and that they've taken the time and care to integrate their acquisitions properly and not cobble together a platform. While other buyers that go this route, oftentimes they believe that their partner, an implementer, or their internal team have a really deep knowledge of that specific vendor's platform. And that knowledge is going to help them with either time to market or cost to implement or something along those lines. With the best of breed platform, You can really have spectacular players at each point, but it can require work to integrate them together properly. But these platforms can be tailor-made to suit your organization and your team's exact needs. And it usually doesn't require an enormous effort to get into a platform like this because they're frequently grown from where you are now, and you likely already have the shape of one of those in place. Next slide. While the vendor pressure might be high, we often feel that you don't need an all-in-one stack, especially if you're coming from a place where you already have a lot of these tools in place. So delivering on digital experience and personalization and contextual commerce, it's a really broad market right now, and we don't feel that any one vendor could be experts in all of the things your organization is going to need. And because experience technology is evolving so quickly and at such an early point in the life cycle, flexibility is typically what prepares an organization best for a market where consumer preferences and expectations are moving so fast. So why don't monoliths work typically? The homogeneous or the monolith it's oftentimes assembled from single solutions that were brought together, but they tend to not be flexibly integrated. The integrations are intentional and they're planned, and oftentimes they're strict. And those end up in practice being unable to react to changing customer demand and experience. So a recent study by the Digital Clarity Group showed that 70% of all respondents either will or have gone the heterogeneous route for platform. They're opting for these best-of-breed tools to meet their evolving needs. The same study, even those that were pursuing the single vendor platform approach, which was a little over 30% of folks, they found that it would be hard to implement the strategy without augmenting that solution with other best-of-breed digital experience products on top of it. Now, this doesn't mean that there are not key pieces of technology that broadly impact the platform, and using a single vendor or a single tool as a backbone and building best of breed on top of that can be a really strong strategy. However, implementer momentum right now appears to be against the all-in-one platform at this point in their maturity. Next slide. All right, so what we have here, this is a depiction of what a heterogeneous platform to provide contextual commerce could look like. You see platforms like Elastic Path for commerce and Acquia for content management and personalization or marketing automation. And you may have some of these tools already in your organization. And having those systems in place is a great beginning. And there's more work to be done to take these systems and deliver a seamless brand experience for your customer and deliver results for your company. So when we work with clients, it's typically around aligning technology, business objectives, and a really deep knowledge of the customer to weave that together into executable experience plans. And this usually involves integrating platforms like Acquia and Elastic Path together with other solutions such as CDPs, which are customer data platforms, CRM systems, inventory fulfillment, amongst others, a lot of the things that were shown on some of Sal's slides. And the goal of that is to deliver tangible business value based on a set of goals that we work with the customer to help define. So those plans, they take these systems and they really wrap the customer in an experience that delivers on the brand promise of the organization, but also tracks the effectiveness of the platform. Because if they're not providing the value that they need, they're not worth the investment. But these results, they don't happen serendipitously. They're the result of a deliberate process of understanding the organization and specifically understanding their customer and the motivations, preferences, behavior, and journey through the brand's touch points. So if the job's done right, it helps the customer by making it easy to accomplish what they need and deliver on the brand promise to them. Next slide. How to be successful. You can go to the next slide again. So being successful is going to require you to bring it all together. So one of the most important points to remember is that contextual commerce efforts are not just technology problems, nor are they just one-time activities. It's a system, and there is no, quote unquote, set it and forget it. It must be an iterative process that underpins your effort if you hope to achieve meaningful results. So we see four major components in any contextual commerce program. So for people to really deliver for your customer, you may need to change how you collaborate internally across your organization. So there's a real importance around executive buy-in, because some of the cover that you're going to need to make those organizational change will have to come from leadership. As for process, the key here is developing a process to better understand your customer, their behaviors, and their goals. So this understanding is what helps you develop campaigns and measure if they're effective. And then data. So investing in capturing the right data to gain more insights and to help make better plans and decisions. And then finally, the technology and understanding the tools and technology in your current stack and maximizing the effectiveness and the evolution of that stack. So when you have it all in place, it's time to run your campaigns, measure the effectiveness, optimize, and iterate. So you should expect that these 4 areas are going to change as your business and market evolve, and change management and governance are going to be an ongoing task as you continue to iterate in each of these areas. But that's a really good thing because it represents opportunity for your organization and opportunity for the people within it. So this evolution is really a key ingredient in what's going to set you apart from the competition. Next slide. And with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we're going to head over to the Q&A, and we're going to pass it back over to Bridget.
Thank you all so much. Yes, we have a couple questions coming in. All right, first question. What use cases do you recommend getting started with personalizing a buying journey? And this is to anyone who wants to jump in and answer.
So this is Sal. Maybe I'll start. So personalizing often is based on past buying patterns, and again, as I mentioned earlier, what segment do you fall into? Are you kind of a high volume buyer, or you're willing to buy quality versus quantity? I mean, there's different ways to kind of characterize and tag users. So within the system, if you're anonymous, we can only use basic information about kind of where you're coming from, IP addresses and things like that. But if you log in and identify yourself, then we start to understand past behaviors and then start to bring that into that next best offer, next best action thing. But maybe Tom has some thoughts on terms of how Lyft can actually help that personalization process as well.
Yeah, I mean, personalization is a journey, and I think everyone wants to wake up to the sort of Amazon-style personalization experience, but we think there's just lots of value in starting small and growing over time. So, with website personalization, you're capturing implicit and explicit details about your customers. Explicit could be the products they've purchased and recommending them similar products. Implicit could be based on how they've clicked through your site. There's lots of ways to go, but I think setting small goals and understanding what your objective is obviously the way to go.
Yeah, and we think that gaining a real understanding of the customer is where it all begins, and depending on where you are in the flow, it starts with collecting information, whether it's from other systems that you already have or from systems that you put in place, because it's oftentimes hard to make meaningful contextual commerce and personalization decisions until you know something about that customer, as Sal and Tom just said.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the carnival experience. Imagine if you're identified as a champagne drinker, but then you're offered beers all the time or scotch or different things, which may or may not be the case. So the systems learn. I think that's a big part of this. And AI, machine learning, as much as they're overhyped in a lot of ways, really are starting to help. In the past, we'd collect that information, put you in segments, and say, well, this person drinks champagne, likely won't drink a lot of beer, so offer them champagne. But the AI engines might start to recognize you as an individual. And I think that's the part of this personalization that's going to get really interesting.
All right, thank you. Next question. Is a CDP necessary to orchestrate this kind of personalization at scale?
Absolutely not. So a CDP is one of those new concepts, customer data platform, that has seemingly come out of nowhere to become the new thing that everyone thinks they need. And the goal of a CDP is to be able to unify, a customer profile across all the different places that a customer might interact, which is very much a noble goal. But I think it comes back to the point earlier where if you're going to wait for a CDP to get started, for most organizations, you're going to be measuring that time in years or longer. I think there are plenty of great ways to get started that don't require the extra complexity of a CDP, and you can start there. I think it's absolutely the right objective to think about a customer data platform strategy, but it shouldn't be the thing that holds you back from getting started with personalization.
Yeah, I agree with that. but I think I agree with that. And developing mechanisms, whether through a CDP or not, of having almost a single user view so that you're not having to stretch across, dozens of platforms to find out information is the right goal. Whether or not that's with a CDP explicitly is obviously open for debate. Another thing to think about too is with things like GDPR and the California Privacy Act is platforms that allow you to do that kind of can help you a lot in the governance and compliance realm as well.
Just remember, Amazon's had like a 25-year advantage, a head start in terms of collecting data at scale. It's been a refinement process for them as well. So the point is, you can get started. Your system may not target perfectly in the beginning, but over time, as you collect more data, as you get more information, you tag the users appropriately, your system will get smarter and smarter, and your conversion rates will get better and better as you start to offer customers products, and your average order values will go up, and your churn goes down if people are hooking into your subscription services and that kind of thing. So get started and refine continuously, and as Frank said, instrument, collect data, analyze, learn, and repeat, rinse and repeat.
All right, thank you. Okay, next question. You mentioned executive buy-in being an important component of getting an organization fully committed to a contextual commerce model. Which industry segments, in your experience, are more committed to adopting it today?
That is a great question. Now, we don't work with all industries, but I mean, obviously, industries that are already doing commerce are more likely to be moving into a contextual commerce space much more rapidly. But there's also the contextualization of personalization in general, not just towards the purchasing of things, but it's whatever the transaction happens to be for that organization, and it can be viewed from the realm of commerce as well. So I don't have.
Frank, you maybe muted yourself.
Yeah. So maybe just to pick up where Frank was talking.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, you're back.
You can go ahead, Sal.
Okay. In terms of industries, at Elastic Path, we're kind of cross industry vertical. We're looking for customers that are really trying to move the needle into more of this contextual experiential commerce. And retailers obviously are one, but we're starting to see next generation retailing experiences across all verticals. Telcos, utilities, everyone is starting to try to better understand their consumers. I talked about omni-channel before, and a lot of times the industry was very focused in on the different channels within their enterprises and how they communicate out and trying to wire all those together. And now next generation retailing concepts are really trying to focus in on that user journey and less about how an organization is structured within their channels. So that's why a lot of us don't like the omni-channel term, because it's very inwardly focused, where we really want to start with the user experience.
Great. Okay, that is all we have time for today. Thank you all again for attending our webinar. As I said previously, slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and also sent to you via email within the next few days. And if you have any additional questions, please send them to marketing@theacquiateam.com. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.